I was going to give you my necklace, but
Chief Clerk threw me off the floor.
Rightfully so.
Very good performance.
roll call for day 10, February 23rd, 2024. Anderson? Baldwin? Barlow? Beitman? Boner? Bouchard? Brennan? Case? Cooper? Dockstetter? Ellis? French? Furphy? Guru? Hicks? Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Kinski? Kolb? Landon? Larson? McEwen? Nethercott? Pappas? Rothfuss? Salazar? Schuler? Scott? Steinmetz? Anderson, excused, Mr. President? Excused. Dockstetter?
Excused.
Excused. French?
Excused.
President Driscoll?
Present.
28 present, 3 excused.
Very right. Richard Gilbert.
Mr. President, may I have a moment of privilege?
Yes, sir, you may.
Oh, thank you. I learned recently that when the four sisters were still in clay, they were naked, probably to represent Michelangelo. And it was Eli Bebop who said they need to be clothed if they're going to be in the Wyoming Senate or in the Wyoming Capitol. So they are clothed to the credit of Eli Bebop. I have received affirmation for the prayers this week, but that affirmation really needs to go back to the persons who are responsible for bringing those four sisters beneath the dome. All I am is copying what others have provided for us. Third, I received, as we all did last night, news that were 3 students on the swim team, I understand, from the university who were killed on that infamous highway between Laramie and Fort Collins. We who are grandparents and parents who have lost a child in an auto accident know the sorrow that is in the minds and hearts of the parents, the colleagues, and the whole university, and probably the entire state of Wyoming. So we need to remember them in prayer, as well as people have been saying, well, you covered the 4 sisters, now what? Well, we'll find out. Let us pray. Our hearts bleed in compassion with the parents, grandparents, colleagues, student body, and the entire state of Wyoming, who lost 3 promising persons in the bloom of their life. The sorrow runs deep. And so in prayer, we stand in compassion and support. And now we're mindful of people in the House and the Senate who will be driving to their homes on the roads of Wyoming this weekend. We ask that they might exercise safety in all their driving, and that you will provide guidance and protection for them as well. We are glad to remember colleagues, friends, and stand in support of them. And now, Creator God, you formed us in your image so we can be conduits of your will and your way. Courageous others have set before us standards of belief and behavior that are beneficial to the whole of your creation. Standards like truth, justice, courage, and hope, etched in stone, that call us to our higher calling. Yet we know words in stone need to be employed in our own blood, flesh, and bone, and be made the foundations of all that we do and say. So in prayer we ask you, Almighty and present God, to enable us to place into daily practice truth, justice, courage, and hope through the thoughts of our minds, the words of our mouths, and the works of our hands. God of sustenance and strength, may words etched in stone become light and life in all we do and say. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Voting, pledge. Senator Boner, lead.
Mr. President, your journal committee reports that the Journal of February 22, 2024 has been read and recommends it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Thank you. Reverend, thank you for that story. I appreciate that. I had originally heard that the sisters were unclothed, and now I know who's responsible for rendering decency. So I'll share with you, and perhaps you already know, the story about the Sistine Chapel. The Pope's secretary was stunned by the amount of nudity that Michelangelo had there, and he lobbied the Pope to fire Michelangelo. And so Michelangelo caught wind of it, and in the Sistine Chapel, he painted a picture of the Pope's secretary nude, with a snake wrapped around him and the snake biting him in a very tender place. And he was stunned, and he went to the Pope and he said, "I insist that that painting be removed." And the Pope looked at him and said, "You have to talk to Michelangelo." It's still there to this day.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, we have a special guest here from my neck of the woods up in the Dayton-Ranchester area. A really, really special kid I've known for a long time. Ryan Good and his mom, Kathy, are here. If you please stand up. Tell you a little bit about Ryan. He's a teenager now, but I remember Ryan when I'd be down fishing at the Ranchester Pond, where he'd always be zooming around on his bicycle, and he'd always stop and talk, and he would talk politics. Oh, my gosh, he would talk for almost an hour if you let him talk politics. He knows so much, and he always has since he was a little kid. It's a passion of his, and I'm so glad he finally got to make it down to the Capitol. It's a long ways from our neck of the woods down here for folks to get down here. Luckily, we don't have school on Friday, so he can be here to watch us in action. Ryan, thank you for coming. It's great to have you here, sir. And Senate, let's give Ryan a great Senate welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable members, I have a dear friend who also happens to be the mayor of Shoshone, Joel Highsmith. And if any of you know about traveling through Shoshone, you definitely do not want to speed through Shoshone. So could we give a Senate welcome to Mayor Joel Highsmith, please?
Privilege of the floor. Thank you. There's a whole large group here from Wyoming Association of Municipalities. It's great that they're here. They're here keeping an eye on all their senators who they represent. I'd like to welcome all those folks with WAM who are here. If they could stand up, if we could welcome them to the Senate.
Sorry. I'd also like to, with your indulgence, introduce another friend of mine who is, we all have friends here today, the Mayor of Riverton, Mayor Tim Hancock. Please, if you could welcome him. I might also add, Mr. President, that some of the staff and city council members of Riverton are here today. And as all of you know, all of you appreciate as well the incredible job that our city councils and mayors do. So thank you again, Mr. President.
You've spoken twice. Doctor for the day, Dean Bartholomew, MD, Family Practice Medicine from Powell, Wyoming. Come on up and welcome, welcome. For your second time, Senator Baldwin.
Thank you. Don't debate this. I just realized there's a glare of lights up there, and I just realized we have some folks from Kemmer up here who traveled the very brave I-80 today. If they could stand up, I see our city manager, one of our council here, and another member of our council. If you could please welcome those folks here.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, there's also a nurse of the day.
Okay, please down so I don't have it.
Come on.
Here we go.
Darcy from Douglas.
Hey, Darcy from Douglas. Yeah. Thank you, Senator Anderson.
Thanks.
Today in Wyoming history, in 1950, a special session of the legislature was called to deal with the problem of grasshopper infestation concluded. Kind of interesting, in February in 1950, they did a special session for grasshoppers. Quote of the day, the pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The leader adjusts the sails. Last day for second reading in the House of Origin. We're on committee of the whole still, so we're a little off of that. We're going to go with it. With that, messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 2022, 2024. Message number 128. Mr. President, House Bill number 83, Public Retirement Actuarially Determined Contributions, passed in an amended form. Ayes 41, noes 21. Message number 130, February 22, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill 126, Child Care is a Residential Use of Property, passed the House in an amended form. Ayes 45, noes 17. Message number 131, February 22, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill 3, Property Tax Exemption for Long-Term Homeowners, passed the House in an amended form. Ayes 45, noes 17. Message number 132, February 22, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 4, Property Tax Refund Program, passed the House in an amended form. Ayes 45, noes 17. Message number 133, February 22, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 45, Property Tax Exemption Residential Structures, passed the House in an amended form. Ayes 45, noes 17. Message number 129, February 22, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 90, Newborn Child Safe Havens, Age of Child, passed the House. Ayes 52, noes 10. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Standing committee reports? Do we have any? Okay, none. Okay. We're going to go through part of our pages and interns are leaving today. I have a certificate for Gilbert. Not your first time getting one of these, I don't think. But, no, a huge thank you, always really grand to have. Well, thank you.
Now that's risky if you give a preacher time for another word or two. I find it a challenge to come and pray with substance and not to step on toes. We all have our political preferences. We have our ideas of what is right and wrong. And yet our prayers are to be inclusive, not political. And it's hard to try and say something that is meaningful and true to your own theology, your own beliefs, and yet relevant to a multitude of people. So I appreciate the challenge. And I also appreciate your affirmation. Not that I'm asking for a pat on the back, but some of you have expressed gratitude, and that's meaningful, not only to me, but to other people who will be praying here, to know that our prayers are being meaningful to you, and how important it is, I think, to maintain a time for prayer at the commencement of the day. So thank you for the privilege and the opportunity to share, and thank you for the honor.
Hear, hear. We're grateful for your words of wisdom. Can we get the Rand and all of our interns come up here? How many, is everybody around? Rand's here. Willow's here. Do we have anyone else? Just the two of you today? Bring them down here. I want them back here with me. Come on down. So Rand, I want you to come up here too. I want to get a picture of you guys all at the desk with me, and then we're gonna do our thank yous to you. And I hope you all have your speeches prepared. Come on up here.
I was reading, I'm sorry. May I have another moment of privilege?
You may, sir. Come on up here, walk right up here.
I have an idea that there is not another Senate in the United States that has a president from a crook county.
There's a Cook County, Oregon, but I don't know if they've ever had a president. Rand, come on up here. I want to get a picture with all of you when they get down here. There we go. Yeah, we'll get them here. So everybody join me in thanking these. We're going to go one at a time and give them a certificate, but I've never got a picture with them in the past. And somebody get on the other side. Yeah, come on over here, Willow. Fellow senators, you all know how much everybody does for us. I've kind of worked the wheels off part of these. It's been fun and really special time. Old family friends and different people that have come. So we're going to start with you, Rand, wherever you went to back here. We've got this certificate and your, out of my drawer here. Got this for you. Thank you so much, but, and I'm waiting for that history report still. You got it? So if you want a couple words, you can walk around there. You all right now?
Mr. President?
Yes. Senator Kays.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we asked Rand to prepare a little speech on his family history and connection here. Would this be the appropriate time, or are you?
This is it. That's what I.
All right,
I
can't wait.
When you gave yours, when he came off, I caught him in the hallway on his phone one day, and I said, I've got an assignment for you. And I said, I want to know all
Right now.
truths in the Capitol. So come on, Rand.
Yeah, so first of all, I am honored to stand before you serving as the Senate page for the 67th Wyoming State Senate. And it means a lot to me, especially being part of the history of the True family within the Senate. It's definitely a very prestigious opportunity. But this opportunity was not earned by me alone. There are countless individuals that I give my thanks to. Firstly, my parents. My mom and my dad have been involved in Wyoming politics since I can remember. And it meant a lot when my mom encouraged me to take this position, and so did my dad. And yeah, but I'd also like to express my gratitude towards my civics teacher from Natrona County, Mr. Anfinson, who encouraged me to compete in the We the People competition back in December down in the basement. And I'd like to thank Senator Driscoll for awarding me the position, not by my namesake, but for my credentials and for my hard work, my perseverance, and yeah. But as many of you know, that my great uncle Deemer served both as a senator and as president of the Senate from 1977 to 1993. And I've heard a number of stories from senators, both former and current, telling me how great of a person he was, and that I am very thankful and very gracious to be a part of the True family. That's not where my the history finishes and where my roots end. Above you, there are 4 murals by Alan Tupper True, a very famous Western artist, known for his easel paintings and his murals. That's where my middle and last name come from, Alan Tupper True. I'm Rand Tupper True. He's my great, great, great uncle. And he is very important to the Western art history of Wyoming. But the importance of these 4 murals are, above you is Indian Chief Cheyenne up in the corner there, the Frontier Cavalry Officer to my right, the Pony Express Rider to my left, and then the railroad surveyors and builders in the left. The importance of the individual term is that it's important to the individuality of the Senate. It's not Pony Express Riders, it's the Pony Express Rider, or it's not Indians, or it's not the Frontier Cavalry Officers, it's the Frontier Cavalry Officer. And this is to reflect the individuality of the Senate, both as individuals. And then in the House, there are 4 murals that are the cattlemen, the homesteaders, the stagecoach, and the trappers. And this is all the plural form, symbolizing the plurality of the House. There's a quote by Alan Tupper True. He said, quote, "While those figures in the Senate are historical and important in their own right, they could not exist without those in the House," both referring to the murals and the chambers. His work did not finish there, though. Following 1918, when he created this, he is painted all over the Mountain West. He's painted in the Brown Palace, he's painted in the Colorado National Bank, he's painted in both the Colorado and the Missouri State Capitol as well. And I gotta shout out my hometown. He did paint the murals within the main branch of the Hilltop National Bank, which is very cool. But it's probably his most famous is the one that's found in the Colorado National Bank, which depicts a Native American hunting ground that is plentiful with bison and other plains wildlife. This was the piece that put him on the map. And then in 1934, Wyoming, former Secretary of State Lester Hunt asked Alan Tupper True for a big project. So the story goes, told by my parents and other family, is Lester Hunt was looking for a way to get around counterfeiting for Wyoming state license plates. It was a black and white stamped sheet metal identification, and it was really easy for contraband smugglers and for, during this is the Prohibition era, so a lot of, well, it's a little bit after, but he was looking for a way to mitigate the issue, to get around it, to solve it. And Jim True, who was Alan's brother, was chief of engineering for the Wyoming Department of Transportation. And he told him, hey, I got a brother who's an artist down in Denver, and he could make a new symbol for us. He could design a new license plate for us. And so he assigned Alan Tupper True to make a new license plate. And again, the story goes that the three are sitting in the Secretary of State office downstairs, and they are looking for an idea for what this should be. And they're collaborating, and they're brainstorming, and they're spitballing. And then what Alan sees, like his epiphany, is there is a picture of Steamboat the Bucking Bronco on the wall. And he's like, well, why don't we use that? It's symbolic of Wyoming, it's recognizable, and it's very hard to trace. So we took that idea, and it's not a one-for-one tracing. He did base it off the design, but the writer, who I forget, Senator Case told me, there's a urban legend about that. The writer stayed the same in the picture and the design. And so he used that design as the license plate. It was adopted in 1935, and then later in 1965, the head of athletics at the University of Wyoming decided to adopt it as their main, or the primary logo for the Wyoming Cowboys and Cowgirls, expanding its recognition throughout the state. And then, finally, I'd like to express my humble appreciation for Senator Case and Senator Barlow, and also Senator Ellis for helping me write this, earn all the information. And I'd like to also thank Chief Clerk Thompson and Clerk Cindy and Clerk Sue and all the Senate staff for their guidance and tolerance and graciousness for the patience with me for the last 2 weeks. And to all the senators, I appreciate your time, wisdom, and you've given me over these past 2 weeks. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Hear, hear. Did I give you your certificate? Yeah.
Can we do another picture because we have another intern here?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Oh, no, absolutely not. You're going to, you're totally. Yeah, you're tall enough. All right. Who's this? Senator Hutchins.
Just a quick privilege. A lot of times I come into the Capitol and there are people here visiting, and I didn't really know the history behind those pictures. So I was wondering if the body could get a copy of Mr. True's report.
I would like that myself. I was.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I meant Mr. President.
Well done. So next, not that I pick favorites at all. So is Willow Lindholm, and that last name might ring a bell to a few of you. Kind of cutting her own path. This would be the governor of Girls State for all of you. So we've worked the wheels off her. She's I probably got a pretty good gas bill. She didn't stay in the Capitol. She's been across town quite a little bit. If you want to do a couple words, and we'll go through the rest. We're keep pretty tight because we're going to kill some bills here shortly. So. We want to know what you're doing next.
Good morning, Senators and President Driscoll. So I did not prepare a speech, so this is going to be quick and short. I would just like to thank all of you for showing me this process and letting me be a part of it. It really has shown me how much that I want to be a part of this process when I can become of age. But I also would like to give a special thanks to President Driscoll for letting me have this opportunity. It's given me a lot of insight and a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have had. I would also like to thank my parents, my mom and dad, Tyler and Charity Lindholm, for pushing me to go through this process. It's really made my high school career great and has shown me what I want to do in my future. So thank you all, and thank you, President Driscoll.
Thank you. Avery? If I run out, I'll go back to.
Thank you.
Do that. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
You want to do a couple words?
Oh,
If you do, you can. If not,
sure, I'll do something.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have to put this down a little bit, so I'm kind of short. I want to thank you all as well for also showing me the process of how our amazing government works. I kind of got interested in government when I attended Girl State, and obviously our amazing governor was there as well. And it was really impactful to be at Girl State and learn that the whole process is really important. And so having the opportunity to be an intern during an actual session was very, very special. I plan to ultimately run for some form of public office, also when I come of age. And so I just want to thank you all for giving me that opportunity. I'd probably be the first in my family to have a position in government, and that is very, very special to me. So I just want to thank you all so very much.
Grace? Is Grace here? Don't think so. I don't think we got certificates. We got too many people. Kinsley Merritt? We got a couple of that are not here, so. Sophia's not here either, so. Kinsley's here. Ah. Oh. Yeah. Senator Dockstader. I'm deaf and I'm looking upstairs.
We get to keep Kinsley a little bit longer. She's going to go down and take care of the House for another week, and then she'll come back to help us here in the Senate.
Very good.
So
We'll
that's
take
why
care
we
of that.
hesitate. She's getting both sides of the building in her experience. Thank you.
So I'm gonna get these for you guys. I'm gonna let you guys one at a time introduce yourselves and do it real quick. And I'm gonna go get you some more coins. We'll be right back. So go ahead and just, if anyone wants to talk. If you don't, I'm just gonna come shake your hand. It's totally optional. So, what do we got?
Hello, my name's James Lake, and I can't thank you all enough for allowing me to be here today and experience the lawmaking process. It's been quite a journey. They've through the university or whatever, but it's paid off. I can't tell you what a fantastic job Dr. Seidel's done at turning that place around and making the student experience worthwhile, especially for someone like me. The quality of instruction has just skyrocketed. And thank you for giving me my guns back. And also my application for the governor's independent living council has been accepted. And I hope to get his recommendation. So things are going in the right direction. I can't thank you enough. Have a great day. Thanks.
I didn't introduce Lily. So we have two Lindholms here.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You get to deal with me for a couple more days. I got one.
Oh, yeah, you can have that. Okay. Rand, did you get one? I did, yes. Okay. You got yours? You didn't get one. Thank you all very much. Let's give them a huge welcome. I really appreciate it. So thank you, guys. And we'll House Bibles on, bills on first reading. We've got the big one here. This is the 5-pounder. Introduction to House Budget Bill. House Bill 1, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 1, General Government Appropriations, sponsored by the Joint Appropriations Committee.
Pursuant to Joint Rule 14-1, small e, House Bill 1 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, bills on third reading and final passage. Do you have a consent list?
Mr. President, we do have a consent list, and the consent list is as follows. Senate File 22, Public Service Commission, Electricity Reliability. Senate File 26, Special District Vacancies. Senate File 27, Special District Bond Election Exemptions. Senate File 79, Malt Beverage Franchise Agreements. Senate File 100, Prompt Payment of Insurance Claims. And Senate File 113, Light and High-Profile Vehicle Closures 2.
Would anyone like any bills pulled to consent list? Senator Scott.
Mr. President, can we remove Senate File 113 from the consent list?
Without objection, so ordered. Anyone else like any bills removed from the consent list? Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 22, Public Service Commission, Electricity Reliability. Senate File 26, Special District Vacancies. Senate File 27, Special District Bond Elections Exemption. Senate File 79, Malt Beverage Franchise Agreements. And Senate File 100, Prompt Payment of Insurance Claims. The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson. Baldwin. Barlow. Whitman. Boner. Bouchard. Brennan. Case. Cooper. Dockstetter. Ellis. French. Purphy. Guru. Hicks. Hutchings. Ide. Jones. Kinski. Cole. Landon. Larson. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. President Driscoll. On the consent list, 31 aye. Senate File 22. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 22, 31 aye.
Senate File 26, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 26, 31 aye. Senate File 27, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 27, 31 aye. Senate File 79, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 79, 31 aye. Senate File 100, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 100, 31 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, Senate File 22, Public Service Commission, Electricity Reliability, Senate File 26, Special District Vacancies, Senate File 27, Special Districts Bond Elections Exception, Senate File 79, Bulk Beverage Franchise Agreements, and Senate File 100, Prompt Payment of Insurance Claims, have passed the Senate. Bills on third reading. Senate File 113, third reading of the Senate file. Senator Scott. Reading clerk will read it in. Thank you.
Senate File 113, Light and High-Profile Vehicle Closures 2, sponsored by Senator Pappas, an act relating to highways.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I rise to speak against this bill. And Mr. President, my basic reason is I don't think it is quite ready for prime time yet. Mr. President, I understand that what the bill does increases the penalties significantly for violating the closures that the Highway Department makes for lightweight, high-profile vehicles, particularly due to high wind, that sort of thing. And there's a real problem there. I'm persuaded that there's a real problem. We're having problems with blowovers. People are ignoring it when they shouldn't. But the difficulty I have, Mr. President, is I don't think that the Department of Transportation has done an adequate job yet of educating the public and the rest of us and articulating which vehicles this applies to. Some of them are pretty obvious. The empty, large tractor trailers, those are pretty obvious and pretty well understood, but it applies to some smaller vehicles. It applies to some private vehicles towing trailers, and that has not been well articulated. And Mr. President, I think they need to do a better job of articulating what's legal and what isn't, and explaining it to the public before we should raise the penalties to the extent we have. So I think this bill isn't quite ready yet. It's addressing a real problem, but we need to take a step further before we start hitting the public with heavy penalties for violating it, because I don't think in many cases people actually know what's legal and what isn't under these circumstances. So on and against the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, as you know, this bill actually was a bill of your Joint Interim Committee on Transportation, and there was a lot of testimony that this bill is really needed. The blowovers that happen on our interstates and on our other roads around the state really severely impact commerce. It costs a lot of money to clear these roads, good state dollars that could be used for other things, including the road. The testimony we heard during the interim all pointed to this is needed now. I think that with the amendment that the good senator from Laramie County put in here, where we took off reckless driving at the first offense, just because if indeed someone was caught and didn't really understand the law, I can see where we can give that leniency. But what we need to do is for those folks that continually violate it, second offense and third offense, then we have some teeth. The law will have some teeth. And I push back a little bit, my good friend from Bates Creek, that this bill is not ready. I think it is ready. Certainly the Wyoming Highway Patrol has the ability, just like in any traffic offense that they stop, they don't have to cite the people the first time if there's mitigating circumstances, and they understand that they didn't get the notice or something went haywire with the message sign. Because remember, the violation can only happen if you violate the actual sign and you ignore it. So I think it's ready for prime time. I think we need it now. And I think that you'll agree with me that we've had way too many of these situations on our freeways that cost us a lot of money and a lot of time, and frankly impacts all of the communities when those roads are shut down. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. While I do appreciate we got an amendment on this bill, I have reservations. So the way they exempt certain vehicles is by rulemaking, but I can't even find that. There's a pamphlet out there, and there's a lot of vehicles that are still up in question here. So give you an example, belly dumps. Belly dumps are very necessary for the infrastructure, building infrastructure in Wyoming. I don't see belly dumps as being exempted. And the way they are built, it's not as high a profile vehicle, so you can actually drive a belly dump out on the road and not have the problem. I mean, you don't see the belly dumps as the ones that are tipping over. It's mostly a dry van. But I think we can do better here. We're gonna put stuff in statute, and we're not really clear on the vehicles that could be exempted. Like if you look at the DOT guideline, it's got the tanker on there, which that was one of the questions I had first. So the tanker's there, but you don't have belly dumps, side dumps. Side dumps aren't as high either. I mean, so there's a lot of trucks that basically it's kind of up in the air. I mean, yeah, maybe they wouldn't give a ticket, but maybe they would. I mean, I don't like having laws that are just ambiguous like that. So, like I said, I agree with the tall senator that I don't think it is ready for prime time yet. I think that we can do better than just throwing some things on paper. I think we should be very specific. If we're going to give the kind of power and authority and the fines that come with this, we should be very clear. There is clearly a problem. We have a lot of trucks that come through here, and a lot of them, they've never driven in any of the conditions we have here, the wind, the ice, the snow. And so that's the real problem here. These people that are driving across Highway 80 that have never been in these conditions, and all of a sudden they're here. That's the real problem. I hate to do a bill that we're gonna put the people that do live here, that do the work here every day, help build our roads, help move the water around for, whether it's for the minerals, or even we have companies here that, even that I've made mention of, the hazmat. Hazmat drivers have a lot of control over what they're, what they have in their custody. And the companies have to route, have a plan of where they're driving. And there are times where they're gonna wanna route differently and take charge of their load and do something differently. This law doesn't even, I mean, I was told how professional they are, that we have real professional drivers in that business, but yet I don't hear the want to give them a little bit of exemption or ability to have an exemption. Like I said, they're carrying loads that they're responsible for. And sometimes they got to make a decision outside of what we can put on black and white on paper. And that's where, back again to where it's not ready yet, we can do better. So I'm going to vote no. I just can't recommend that this bill is ready to go forward. Thank you.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the bill. There's been a lot of testimony given about what the need is. I think we all know about blowover problems in the state of Wyoming, and it is a challenge. But I might want to add, I hold a CDL, X&T endorsements, hazmat doubles, tippers, tanks, everything except bus. And I'll tell you, as a professional driver, you're held to a higher standard. And that's your responsibility. And if we talk about hazmat, you need to take extra special responsibility. Yeah, you can't park in certain areas. You have to park in designated areas. There's a lot of things that go into this. But to somehow then exempt poor behavior, repeated behavior, I don't think it's the best service to the constituents of our state, to the interstate commerce. I think that does us a disservice. So I think that this is a reasonable bill that puts reasonable fines on violating, a blowover hazard billboard instructions. That was cut down. The penalty was changed. It basically allows you to get a blowover a year. Every year, you get a blowover. I mean, really? We don't learn from the first time or maybe the second time? No, we'll do one every year. Well, that was a compromise to try to, try to enact something, and this is something, and there's going to be rules adopted. They are going to be judged on a case-by-case basis, certainly when there's a question about when the sign information came up or didn't come up. And if you went by it, didn't see it, you have to knowingly drive by these signs, and they're going to be instructional signs that are much different than they were in the past. It is not the same thing as it was. It's about high-profile vehicles, not about belly dumps. They're not the things that fall over in the wind. I think if there was a hurricane over there and a tornado that took one over, I think that might be a little bit act of nature. But on and for this bill, because it's reasonable, it protects the traveling public, it protects our interstate commerce, and I think it just has become a necessary thing to do because we have high winds. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Case.
I'll stand.
Question being called. Oh, excuse me, Senator Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate my colleague from Sweetwater County that really emphasized that it's only a year look back to have the increased fine of $2,500 and the reckless driving. Otherwise, we are simply raising the penalty by $250. Effectively, that's what this bill does. So to have the exact same discussion after we made major concessions on this bill is a little frustrating. This is a serious issue. We've taken the concerns of the opponents of this bill seriously. And so to stand up and say the exact same thing you said on committee of the whole, I think that's unfortunate, Mr. President. Now, once again, WYDOT is doing a great job communicating. If you're a professional truck driver and you don't know what a high-profile vehicle is, maybe you should pull over. maybe you shouldn't be on the road. So it's pretty obvious if you apply a little bit of common sense, what this applies to, what it doesn't. Let's move the bill forward. This is important for public safety. This affects every one of our constituents. Let's move the bill forward. I ask for your aye vote.
Senator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm going to vote for the bill, but honestly, after hearing the debate and then after spending a few minutes trying to find out what a high-profile or lightweight vehicle is, and being utterly unable to do so, specific to Wyoming, even finding discussion threads as some of my first hits of, hey, does anyone know what one of these is? And then the answers coming back, no, not really, pointing to links that would provide some possible suggestions of what that definition might mean, and then having one person out there wondering if their sedan might be subject to that consideration. Mr. President, I think it might be appropriate in the second chamber to try to narrow this down. I agree with all of the debate about the importance of it. We all know why this bill is coming forward, and it's coming forward with a very good reason. But it's not appropriate in statute to leave everybody wondering what you're talking about. And I do agree that those folks holding CDLs probably have a good sense of what people are talking about. But it's not a bad idea to be a little clearer in statute to give the everyday driver that might be driving a truck moving their furniture across the country as they're moving to a new home or something along those lines, just a hint of guidance on when they should and shouldn't be driving and what those signs actually mean. So I'm going to be aye on this legislation to get it out of the chamber. This is sort of our last chance here, and I think it's important. But I guess I would just ask the proponents of the bill to work on that and give it some thought. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator Pappas for your second time.
Mr. President, for my second time, just to answer that point, there is guidance. Someone with a sedan would not, when you pass the sign, remember, it's not just high profile, it's also light. And so the signs will say vehicles over 40,000 gross vehicle weight. So your sedan's not going to be there. And if you do have a bus, a motor home, you rent a big truck, you need to know those things. So it's incumbent upon people to understand and read the sign and not violate the sign. If you're overweight or you're underweight and you've got a big vehicle, maybe you shouldn't pass that sign. So I know the WYDOT has worked with the University of Wyoming about all the different profile vehicles. They're going to be providing additional information on their message signs. They're working on it right now. So I think they're going to be more and more specific as they go. But we need a statute in place for them to be able to, whatever they put on the signs, to be able to enforce it. Thank you, Mr. President.
He's spoken twice. Sponsor, I believe. No, you're all right. Charlie Scott was who brought it.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, look, I take a little bit of offense saying that if you're you have a CDL license and you don't know what a high profile vehicle is, you shouldn't be driving. So, in my opinion, a belly dump is not a high profile vehicle. It's not, but we're not worried about my opinion. We're worried about what the officer on the side of the road, what his opinion is, and where does he drive that opinion from? When I have an owner of a company call me and say, hey, are my high bellies, and this is a true statement here, call me and say, hey, are these vehicles going to be affected? And I say, let me look. And I can't find it. So you've got an owner of a company who has belly dumps and doesn't know if he's gonna be affected, call, and I can't tell him, can somebody please tell me? That's the problem here. That's what I'm talking about. How do we know that we're not affecting someone because we don't have it in writing? That's what I'm getting at. That's the only thing I'm getting at. We're gonna allow this up in rulemaking, but we haven't seen it yet. So I hope that gives clarification to the body of what I'm having, where the heartburn is.
Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the bill, Mr. President, this agency is very good at enforcement, and there will be a learning curve. And the notion that it's a once a year and $250 is not that big of a deal. Mr. President, it's a safety issue. It's an economic issue, not just for the state, but for the country. When they have to close I-80 or I-25, especially I-80, it's mayhem. And people can die. And we've had, I can remember that, do you remember that video of that highway patrolman when the car's video showed the truck blowing over and hitting the car? Do you remember that? If you're behind one of those things, I've gone home every weekend for all these years. I put 500,000 miles doing that. That's the scariest place in the world. And when people are careless and don't know enough about it, and this agency wants that road safe. This agency's not out to lock people up. This agency's out to they want to keep the road open. And they're the best enforcers. Our troopers are so professional, you guys. And they're out there, their lives are on the line when this happens too. They're the ones out there writing these tickets when the wind is howling at 90 miles an hour, and they'll do a good job. And they'll educate, and it'll be lenient, and it's gonna work out. And yes, we have another opportunity down the hall if there's any tweaks that need to be made. Vote aye.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none. Having heard 3 separate times, the question is, shall Senate File 113, light and high-profile vehicle closures 2, pass the Senate? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 113, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Cooper, aye to no. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 113, 19 aye, 12 no.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elect the Senate, Senate File 113 has passed the Senate. Standing committee reports.
February 23, 2024. Mr. President, your committee number 2 appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 70 engrossed. Local government distributions respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Garou, Kinski, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Nethercott. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 23, 2024, Mr. President, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 71, Broadband Development Sub-Account Amendments. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Giroux, Kinski, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Nethercott. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 23, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 72, Workers' Compensation Provision for Adverse Deviation. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Giroux, Kinski, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Nethercott. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 23, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 73, Abandoned Mine Reclamation Accounts. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Giroux, Kinski, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Nethercott. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 23, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 26, Emergency Protective Services Effective Period. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman. February 23, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 27, DFS and Law Enforcement Cross-Reporting. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
Granted.
Thank you. Senators, I just wanted to introduce our good mayor from the city of Torrington and his crew that he brought down today. And would you give them a great Senate welcome? Welcome.
Granted, Senator Kinski.
I'd like to welcome my mayor, Buffalo Town Mayor Shane Schrader, and Town Councilman Scott Madsen. Please give them a big welcome.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, with that order of business. Consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion is passed. Senator Ellis, welcome.
Committee of the whole, come to order. How fast was that? All righty. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 75. Will the reading clerk please read the Senate file?
Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, sponsored by the Water Committee, an act relating to water development projects. It was referred to Committee Number 5, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, Kolb, Larson, and Steinmetz. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 75 do pass, and there is a standing committee amendment. I would ask that it be read in at this time.
Will the reading clerk read in the standing amendment?
Senate File 75, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 5, lines 21 and 22, delete.
Thank you, Senator Schuler. Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I would go ahead at this time and move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 75 and ask for your favorable consideration. And I will go through the Standing Committee Amendment before I have the good presenter of the bill come forward. Fellow Senators, what this Standing Committee Amendment does is it deletes the aerial cloud seeding project out of the omnibus water bill construction for $875,000. So it deletes the aerial cloud seeding. We heard from the Good Cloud Seeding Caucus last year and knew that this was a issue of concern, so we deleted that. And then we added in another $500,000 from that savings into the small water projects. And so that is what this amendment does, and I would stand for any questions, and if there are none, I'd call for the question.
Questions on the amendment or discussion on the amendment? Senator Case?
I think I'd like to know a little bit more about this, maybe from some other folks that have been following the cloud seeding saga for a long time. I know it's a long-term program. It's designed to have a marginal increase in precipitation. I think it might benefit my neck of the woods. I know there's questions about its effectiveness, but I think the recommendations in the past have been that we continue the program. And so, and I frankly don't know anything about it, but I have a feeling we're not hearing the whole side, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Senator Case. Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, on that question about the aerial cloud seeding, it turns out that the margin of error, the unpredictability of the outcome is within the amount they claim it gained. So in my mathematical mind, that means we are absolutely unsure if it does much of anything. It's clear by the aerial data. They have video of what happens, and it does affect a change. The question is, how much long-term other factors that it can involve with when you disrupt the natural method of the atmosphere to deposit snow, let's say. What other consequences are there? So it was indeterminable, really, what the benefits were. It's within the margin of error. That was the outcome of the study. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, so the portion we're deleting is on page 6 and part of page 7 through line 11, and this is the Medicine Bow and Sierra Madre ranges, and this is just the aerial. The ground-based is still intact. That is found to be more effective than the aerial cloud seeding through information provided, and so you will see on page 7 and under D, the ground-based in the Wind River and Sierra Madre remains in the bill. We're just taking out the aerial-based. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I hope that helps.
Further discussion? Senator Landon?
So, Madam Chairman, sorry to hold this up a little bit, but it seems to me that through the years, our water experts on the floor have encouraged this program, and it particularly, as I recall, targeted an area of the world up above the good senator who just spoke, and that's pretty critical to the Colorado River Compact. And so I guess I'd like a little bit more conversation about why we might be turning away from a program that we've been told in the past really works. And it really, you know, where we do that seeding seems to target the very area that we're going to need to send some water downriver. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator, further discussion? Senator Ide?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I sat in and listened to that debate, kind of questioned it last year as well. And, you know, they've been doing a lot of this over decades and no discernible results. And I'm like everybody else in here, more water is better, but there's just, it appears that we're just throwing good money after bad with really no way to quantify any real results from this. And it seems like this is a good time maybe to back away from this, put more money into other projects, and the ground seeding was left in there too. We got that from the testimony that's where you could recognize some results. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chairman, I'd be interested, obviously, this came from our Water Committee and came from recommendations from the Water Development Commission, presumably, and that's typically how we end up seeing this. And so I'd just be curious about more discussion about what got it here in this omnibus bill prior to voting to take it out. Again, I know a lot of work goes into preparing this during the interim. There's a tremendous amount of testimony, and the idea that we would just go against those recommendations without having any data, evidence, or analysis, I'm curious for what brought us to this point.
Further discussion, Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Madam President, I'll try to answer some of these questions. So it hasn't eliminated the ground-based program and the upper green, that's where most of the water that comes out of the Colorado River. All those ground-based generators will still be funded. There's one of those in the Little Snake. So all that's in place. And part of the reason is because the Colorado River, and then under that scenario, we have a number of the lower basin states, the Bureau of Reclamation, a number of people are cost sharing in that program. So we're only footing the bill for about 37% of that. So the one that's is going to be removed with this amendment would be the aerial operation that occurs over the Sierra Madres and basically the Snowy Range. This has been an ongoing discussion with the agency for a number of years. We've reduced the amount in the Colorado River Basin to make the other partners actually bring more money to the table. The fundamental underlying reason that I think that it's always a little bit of a putball is to, I think my colleague talked, it's within the statistical margin of error, but I would tell you that the data probably leans towards the fact that we're augmenting the snowpack. One of the fundamental issues that you deal with when you augment the snowpack, it doesn't change the hydrograph. In other words, the high flow comes off at exactly the same time, it's just a little higher. It doesn't put more water out late into the year when you really need it.
State of the mic, please. I can't hear you up here.
So, Madam President, to maximize the benefit of any snow augmentation, you really need to be able to capture that and carry it over through a reservoir. We have plenty of reservoirs on the North Platte. The number one reason probably that we're taking a hard look at this program is even if you take all of these statistical estimates of how much it increases the amount of water within the system, may not ever make it to a head gate or anything, but just in the system through the snowpack, comes out to about $81 an acre foot. For municipal water, that may be relatively cheap, but I'm not even aware of any municipality that pays $81 an acre foot for water at this point. So it really comes down to a cost effectiveness of the program. It has probably some benefits to augmenting the system. So it's just a policy question as to whether the state wants to continue to provide augmentation at $81 an acre foot on average across all the programs or not. And so I hope that helps with some of the discussion.
Senator Guru?
Thank you. Madam Chair, first I wanted to make sure we're cleared up on one thing. I think it was the Ag Committee who is standing committee amendments taking this out. Select Water and the Water Commission had these things in the original plan. I have one more question. I'm looking at this amendment and I'm having a hard time tracking it to what we're talking about. And it shows delete 9 million. Yeah, I got a feeling, I just don't know if this is the right amendment. I'm just asking. Take a look.
Senator Hicks?
Madam Chairman, I think I can answer that because I think this goes into our non-codified water law. So any of these projects have a running total on them. And so what you see is that includes the appropriations since we stood up the program as the total cost that and that's just the way we accrue all of those projects within the non-codified section within the water bills.
Further discussion? Senator Larson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I would ask to divide the amendment. I'm going to go line 1 through line 10.
Hold on 1 second, please. Okay, proceed. Line 1 through line 10.
Yes, that's Division 1 and the remaining Division 2. I was probably the lone ranger on this. I think it's.
Mr. Senator Larson, let me just look. I need to see if that's appropriate. 1 second. It appears to be divisible, and if anyone else can help me track that in and wants to help check that homework, that would be great. But please proceed on Division 1, Senator Larson.
I know during discussion in the Ag Committee, there's quite a few on there that think this isn't worth our time spending money on, but I know the city of Cheyenne puts a little money into this to try to encourage it, but I think it's worth it. I think it helps get some more snow on the ground. It's more expensive than the ground, the way that we do it on the ground. They have an airplane that flies up there and gets in the clouds when the conditions are right. And so anyway, I'd ask for a no on Division 1 and a yes on Division 2.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would just say vote your conscience on this. We brought this to the body as a policy decision for you. In our evaluations, there was a lengthy discussion on select water as well as the Ag Committee. Your Senate Ag Committee has 4 members of the Select Water Committee on it. And so this was not done without due consideration or a lot of thought and contemplation on this issue. However, this is our recommendation to you. The majority of us, it is obviously up to the body as we work the budget. You know, this is up to you whether you want to make this policy decision or not. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Further discussion on Division 1, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, as I read page 6, line 17, the consequence of adopting the Standing Committee amendment financially is to save $825,000. That's significant money. I urge adoption of the Standing Committee amendment.
Further discussion, we're on Division 1, Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I think when we had this similar discussion last year, we were told, let's keep this going another year because we're going to get a report. We're going to get more information on this. So is there any update on what analysis has been done? I know it's been reference analysis. Is that the analysis that now we think is within the margin of error, or is there more to come analyses? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Barlow, further discussion, we're on Division 1. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, and I don't have that with me, but so I'm just working off my recollection. So my recollection is that the estimate was that this was probably putting somewhere between 5,000 to 8,000 acre feet of water within the watershed. That would probably, you know, again, that's within the statistical margin of error. And again, it come back, part of that analysis was to look at, you know, the cost of the program versus the cost of the amount of water. Roughly, it was about $81 an acre foot based on the estimates in the report. So I hope that helps to answer that question. And again, I'm just working off of memory here. But that's my recollection. I hope that helps answer that question.
We are on Division 1. Further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Division 1 to Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 75, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The division has failed. We're on Division 2.
Division,
Division's being called on Division 1. All those in favor of Division 1, please stand. All those opposed, please stand.
In the back, are you standing to be opposed, or do you want to sit down?
I'm going both ways.
I always thought that.
don't read a lot into that.
How many? Senators, you need to remain standing. You're a moving target. The Division 1 has passed 19-9. We're back on Division 2. Further discussion? Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. For my first time on Division 2. On the second page within Division 2 is this H paragraph, and I tried to fit it in to understand context of the $500,000 that is contingent upon a transfer, but I couldn't figure out what the purpose of that transfer was based on the bill we have in front of us. I think there's some other language that I don't see that might be key there. So I was just curious about what's going on with that amendment.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you for that question. It's just the 500,000 for the small water projects. Those have been very effective across the state, and that 500,000 would go into that program because it was underfunded. There were way more applicants than we had funding for, so we went ahead and funded the rest of those projects.
Further discussion, we're on Division 2. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of Division 2 to Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 75, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The Division 2 has passed. We're back on the bill. Senator Steinmetz?
Madam Chairman, and I would call on the good tall senator from Park County to explain the rest of the omnibus water bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator French.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everybody got their little three-wing ring binder. It starts with the outer sheet, the blue outer, and then it's got all the tabs inside. Got a number. Pardon? You just have the sheet? Okay, I'll go through it then. What it does on the bill starts on page 1, Senate File 75, and it goes, it's, I believe, 54 pages long. And what it does is it describes, and it will tell you, like, well, apparently none of you have the tabs, but it will describe, as you go through the bill, it will tell you the project, it will give you a description of the project, how it came about, where it's at. Very informative. That what I've got has a little more detail to it, but as you see, you'll go down through, and we just discussed the snow augmentation. That's the aerial part's out now. Got the ground part, the $298,651. Then you'll go down through there, and it'll have like page 11, Bridger Valley tank replacement, 13, Dayton Water System rehabilitation, municipal, both of those were municipal. Then bill page 15, it'll Deaver Irrigation District laterals, that's an ag project. So I won't go through all of them line by line, but you know, if you look on the far right-hand side of it, under description, you know, you go down through there and it's municipal and rural domestic, municipal and rural domestic, municipal, ag irrigation, ag irrigation, ag irrigation, ag, municipal, 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 rural domestic, small water program funding, rural domestic, ag irrigation, multipurpose, municipal, 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 ag irrigation, ag, rural domestic, municipal. So it's a good bill. It's a good product. It spreads some money around, and the importance of it. You know, a lot of times get accused that it's all maybe ag related. You know, you can see it's not. It's for the cities, towns, and the ones that are ag, well, that benefits, yeah, the ag community, but where do they go spend their money? They go spend their money in the municipal. So I contend that this is for everybody, and everybody wins on this. It's important to the cities. It's very important for have a good clean water supply, ample water supply, same as those farmers, ranchers out there, same thing, that they have an ample water supply. So I would encourage an aye vote on this. Thank you.
Discussion on the bill? Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the bringer. And I think we all know that these are important projects. I think we all know how important water is to all of us, and whether it's not, of course, not just the Ag Committee, it's everyone, every city, town, everybody in the state. Then my question is, I'm serve on Select Water, and I know we've talked about this, but I know I've had some questions about some of the projects, delays in projects because sometimes easements haven't been secured, or that, you know, it just wasn't ready with engineering, or the timing wasn't right for one reason. Could you talk a little bit about that? I know it's been discussed, but I just, you know, talk a little bit about some of the issues that come with that, because I know it ends up costing more money right now, especially during these inflationary times. And so I was wondering if there was any discussion about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussion, Senator French.
That'd be mine.
Oh.
I would go with phone a friend, Senator Larson or Senator Kolb, who's on the Select Water, that probably had a broader discussion of it, if I may.
Senator Hicks.
So, Madam, this has been a discussion, and I think Senator Guru is getting to an issue that we're trying to clean up within the way the process works. A lot of times, we've got a project in here that I think we're going on 6 years waiting on easements, and it ties up a lot of funding. And then when you finally get the easements in place, then you have these significant cost escalations. So we've been working with the agency to try to tighten that up, and in any of the applications that are funded for construction, keep in mind all the level 1 and level 2 projects. That's the other component on the other side that will be coming over here in the planning bill. State funds at 100%. But his point is we have had a number of projects. We've dealt with another one this year with a municipal project that working with the agency. I think we're going to get this thing tightened up, that construction funding doesn't go forward until all those easements and agreements are in place, because it really has tied up a lot of money and resulted in significant cost escalation for a number of projects. I hope that answers his question.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just kind of wanted to go through the totals just so everybody's kind of got an idea what the dollar amounts we're talking about. So with the amendment we made, we're at approximately 1.8 million out of Water 1, almost 11 million out of Water 2, 30 million out of Water 3. Those are not exact numbers. And then there are some projects we put on the general fund this time as well. So about 8.4 million in the general fund. So I just wanted to make sure everybody looked at those totals and knew exactly what we were doing. Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 75, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Senate File 75 has passed the committee of the whole. Our next file for consideration is Senate File 24. Will the reading clerk please read in the Senate file?
Senate File 24, Public Service Commission Integrated Resource Plan, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, an act relating to public utilities. It was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Excused, Senator Barlow. Senator Case, Chairman.
Senator Case, my apologies. Senator Case.
How do you do, Madam Chairwoman? I would move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 24, Public Service Commission Integrated Resource Plans. And Madam Chairwoman, this bill deals with the planning process that happens within our realm of public utilities. Electric utilities especially are intensely capital intensive. That's good use of diction, right? Intensely capital intensive, but it takes a long time to build projects, to improve capacity, and to meet the needs. So you have to plan a long, long ways ahead. And there's a whole series of processes that involve this. First, you've got to scope out a plan, and then you have to, when you begin to hone in on that plan, you might come in to have a particular new generating unit or other transmission facility approved by the commission. And then farther down the road, you build it, and then you have to get it brought into the rate base so that you start earning a return on it. And it doesn't happen in a vacuum in Wyoming because we're part of several states that, with our large utilities that cross state lines. So we're not alone in this process. The very first step and the ongoing step is this thing called integrated resource planning. And that's where the commission will, or the utility will propose how they're going to meet the needs of the system over the coming decades even. And then that plan is constantly updated. It's kind of an ongoing target. But there's controversy about how you meet the needs. There's controversy about whether you could use things called demand-side management to reduce load, so you don't need so much facility. There's controversy about what facilities to build. There's controversy about the transmission lines. It's a very big controversy throughout all the states. Some states have a more formal process to look at integrated resource plans. In Wyoming, we really don't. It's simply you send the planning in, and it's become sort of a acknowledgement. A few years ago, I asked the commission to take a closer look at a proposed integrated resource plan, send it to hearings, and let people comment on it. I was unsuccessful. That was denied. A little later, at another round of this planning process, our chief executive asked for the same thing, and they did spend some more time on that. But this formalizes that short of a formal rate case, but says we're actually going to create a proceeding here, and we're going to have some give and take, and we're going to let people address the issues of how we meet the needs and have a little bit more light shed on the plan up front. Because if you don't look at the plan up front, you kind of get stuck in the plan, because the next step is from the plan, they begin to build the resources. Then the resources, when they're deciding to build the resources, they come into the commission and say, hey, remember our plan? We filed it last year. We told you what we were going to do. Now we want you to approve construction of this new blank kind of plant. So the commission goes, Okay, well, let's look at that, but we did tell you you could have your integrated resource plan. We did see it, you did tell us. So we're more likely to approve the facility with when it's proposed. And then once you come to the rate case, the argument's gonna be, well, we had it in our plan. And secondly, you approved its construction, so here we are, we want our money. And I guess my point in all this is once we get started down a path, we tend to get stuck in that path. And this way, we're going to ask a few more questions up front, open it up for more participation by interested people. That's just the bill. I ask for your support.
Thank you, Senator Case. There's a standing committee amendment. Have we had that read in yet?
Senate File 24, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 3, after.
Senator Case?
I don't have that. Somebody have it handy? Thank you, Senator Hutchins.
Senator Case?
Yeah, actually, I think this is it's obviously ours. This is an appropriation. This is going to take a little bit more work by the commission, and so this adds up to 2 more full-time positions and $600,000. That's what this does. It's that's why we sent it to the Appropriations Committee.
Discussion on the standing committee amendment?
And I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 24.
Discussion on the standing committee amendment.
Thank you, Senator Hutchins.
Seeing none, all those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The standing committee amendment has passed. We're back on the bill. Discussion on the bill, Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious regarding, does the commission ever follow up on these plans submitted to see if they're truly implemented or if they're just put on the shelf? Thank you.
Senator Case?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think our commission is very responsible. I think everybody scrutinizes activities of public utilities these days because, you know, the costs are way astronomical and our journey through providing reliable, safe electric power in the coming decades is challenging. But the plans had no teeth before. So there was no consequences if you didn't follow the plan. But the plans are constantly updated. And so they will evolve every couple of years. There's sort of minor updates and then there's major look backs. And this is really the major look back piece that we are going to scrutinize it more. And I think it will lead to a higher standard of looking at these. And we'll be matching what some of the other states that we share utility resources with do. And I think that's a good thing as well. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 24, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Senate File 24 has passed committee of the whole. The next Senate file for Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I have privilege of the floor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Today, we're joined in the gallery upstairs by a member of the Wyoming Arts Alliance, known as WIA, and their Cultural Champions Network. They're over here on the right-hand side. Cultural Champions are a multi-generational network of arts and culture leaders from both tribes on the Wind River and every county in Wyoming, who convene monthly to learn from each other and help WIA improve the environment for the arts and culture in their local communities. So you'll see them around the Capitol today, and you're invited to meet them today at their Cultural Recognition Luncheon in the Conference Room 53 in the Capitol Connector, and also tonight at the Governor's Arts Awards. Please give them a big Wyoming Senate welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schuler. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 41. Will the reading clerk please read in the Senate file?
Senate File 41, Banking Division Classification and Salary Exemption, sponsored by the Minerals Committee, an act relating to banks, banking, and finance. was referred to committee number 9, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman, was re-referred to committee number 2, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman.
Thank you. What is your pleasure? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recommend that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 41, and to explain the bill, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I bring Senate File 41, Banking Division Classification and Salary Exemptions. Madam Chairman, this legislation was worked originally by the Blockchain Select Committee, and then we recommended it to the Minerals Committee, which passed it through onto the legislature. And Madam Chairman, this is legislation that we actually passed 3 years ago and then was vetoed by the governor, by the chief executive downstairs, and based on some concerns at that point in time. Those concerns have been addressed through an amendment, which we'll get to shortly, so that we can come back and address the original problem that led to us bringing the legislation in the first place. And that problem, Madam Chairman, is that the Division of Banking has an increasing workload that is significant to financial institutions of the state of Wyoming. We have changed our trust laws, our banking laws. We've developed a new type of state chartered bank, and we have created a requirement that they understand how to work with in custody digital assets that has led to an exponential growth in responsibility and expertise over the past 6 years. But at the same time, we have been unable to work towards classification of their positions in a way that allows them to recruit and retain expert employees. So since 2019, when a lot of these efforts regarding trust law changes as well as Speedy Bank legislation have implemented, the Division of Banking, which has 28 people on staff, have seen 35 position turnovers. And there are only 2 individuals that are actually left from that point in time. And it's not because they don't like the work, Madam Chairman, it's because they are easily poached by industry. It's of no problem. So we serve as a training ground for exceptional banking and trust regulators that are then trained to understand about digital assets, and then they're easily taken by industry. And as a result, there are quite a few vacancies at this point in time, and it's become challenging. So, Madam Chairman, what this legislation does is take the classification out from under A&I and make it directly between the commissioner of the Division of Banking and the governor to negotiate and figure out what appropriate pay bands would be. Madam Chairman, one key of this, which I want everyone to understand, is that the Division of Banking is not general funded in any way. All of the funding for the Division of Banking come from fees paid for by financial institutions in the state of Wyoming, and those financial institutions support this legislation. They want to be regulated well. They want regulators to be easily available and highly skilled. They're asking for this, and that's the impetus of this legislation, is to meet the needs and interests of our financial sector throughout the state and to ensure that they have continuation of these regulators, expertise among the regulators, and a fully staffed workforce. So they are more than happy to pay the fees, but they're actually unable to pay the salaries that are needed because we stop them from paying market due to the A&I requirements and statute. This legislation allows for an adaptive response where the commissioner works with the governor to figure out what's appropriate based on recommendations from industry, recommendations from the board. So, Madam Chairman, looking at the legislation, you see that it is just one paragraph that provides that exception that we described, but I'm not going to go specifically through this paragraph because due to the requests of the banking board as well, the banking commissioner and the governor through the veto letter, we have an amendment that replaces that to describe an alternative process. So with that, I'd ask that Standing Committee Amendment number 1 be read in.
Senate File 41, Standing Committee Amendment number 1, page 1, line 4, delete.
Senator Rothfuss.
I move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 41 and ask the body's favorable consideration. Madam Chairman, this is effectively the replacement language that we've worked on to get it to reflect exactly what I said, where it's the governor and the commissioner working together to determine those classifications. That is consistent then with conversations with the chief executive, with the banking commissioner, and helps to address concerns that were in the veto note, which were an overly significant role for the banking commission, which is perhaps in conflict, an overly significant role with the appropriations committee where it was ambiguous, so there's clarity added here. And then, Madam Chairman, with that, I'd address any questions on Standing Committee Amendment number 1, and if there are no questions, I'd call for it.
Discussion on Standing Committee Amendment number 1. Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing that I wanted to ask is, we heard about the fees being paid by the banking industry. Does it increase the expenditures from in-state government? And does it make a special class of employees within the state as well? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Standing Committee Amendment? Senator Rothfuss?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. And just to be clear, that this will be true whether the Standing Committee Amendment passes or not. My response will be relevant. Again, no additional general fund, but the expectation would be that the salaries would be increased to the appropriate range for industry competitors. And you can see the language in the amendment that it has to be consistent. Classifications and salaries shall be commensurate with other state and federal financial regulators. So just trying to bring it to market for those positions. The way it works right now is the internal classification system has some broad classifications that banking division has been classified into that have nothing to do with the private market. So they might work internally, but they don't meet external, and therein lies the problem. So this provides for the opportunity to reclassify that. So, Madam Chairman, I don't see it as growing government in any way. I see it as right-sizing the salaries to ensure that we can hire the employees. Those fees will be paid for and are desired to be paid for by the financial sector. And this does not directly address the ability at this time to increase the number of FTEs. There may be such a request in the future if they grow, but what they're working on right now is the ability through their 900 series funds availability to hire temporary expertise when the workload surges to address perhaps heightened needs that are temporary. And this should hopefully fulfill all those interests. So I'd call for any other questions on the Standing Committee Amendment number 1.
Further discussion on the Standing Committee Amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senator Rothfuss's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 41, please say aye.
Point of order. Standing Committee Amendment number 1.
My apologies. All those in favor of Senator Rothfuss's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 1, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The amendment has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. With that, I'd answer any further questions on the bill. Hope you'll support it.
Senator Kinski?
Thank you. Could we have a little more discussion on what the issue was with A&I? And I've got my own reservations, but they do have a methodology of identifying, skills and surveying surrounding governments and states and coming up with that's what we went through on the last 2 pay studies. What is it that they're not doing that they could or should be doing for the banking division? Because I'm kind of reluctant to turn it over to the division to determine their own salaries, even with the oversight of their board. I'd feel better if there were more rigor in the salary analysis than what I think they can bring to bear. So there is a methodology in A&I. What do we need to do to get A&I to come and help this agency do this pay survey right? Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Rothfuss?
Madam Chairman, boy, I wish I knew the answer to that, because this has been a challenge not just for this agency, but the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, Department of Environmental Quality, nearly every division. For as long as I've been in the legislature, the responsiveness of the A&I process is such that it just doesn't get done. So, Madam Chairman, I know that theoretically on paper, there are paths to achieve this, and that was something that was suggested 3 years ago when we passed this the first time, and here I am again. Between then and now, it's theoretically been worked on, and there's no solution. So, Madam Chairman, I understand that the Joint Appropriations Committee has this on their radar, and I appreciate that, and I hope that it will be addressed through additional legislation, through process refinement, and really trying to figure out what is holding up the ability of these agencies, particularly the ones that are independently funded, like Banking Division and OGCC, where they don't even need funding because their clients, so to speak, are more than willing to pay market whatever's needed so that they can have the highest quality regulators available so that the jobs can get done well and get done quickly. So again, to the good chairman's question, I have no idea, and I wish I did. If I had known, I would have fixed it years ago if I could have. So there's a challenge there. But Madam Chairman, the response that I think we've had a lot is, all right, well, we need to fix this problem on a broad scale. We need to fix it government-wide. We need to get A&I right. I agree. This is trying to fix an immediate problem that has urgency, and this is a solution to it that I think will address the problem. I don't believe that we need to abandon the broader picture of how do we fix A&I, and I hope in a few years perhaps we can just do away with this because A&I is doing what they should be doing in this circumstance, and then we wouldn't need legislation like this. But Madam Chairman, again, I've seen it time and again where the classification process leads to an inability to recruit and retain because it's more important that classifications line up through a bureaucracy and human resources than getting the right person for the job. And that emphasis on bureaucracy first, performance second, does not lead to positive outcomes. This tries to get us to the point where the bureaucracy is minimized. And again, I realize it's a Band-Aid, but it's a Band-Aid on a massive wound that we need to cover up and fix. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Furphy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Part of the problem that I'm aware of, and I've had discussions with individuals, there are no other states or even national bank examiners that have been trained in this blockchain technology and or even the trust area where we've created all these new regulations. So it's not something simply that A&I can go out and find competitive salaries for these individuals. Hopefully the institution across the hill has developed courses in blockchain technology and other things, so hopefully we can train our own people to be able to look for any fraud or anything going on in these new banks. But I think, Madam Chair, that's the issue right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Furphy. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Dockstedter's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 41, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Senate File 41 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 25.
Senate File 25, Reclamation and Decommissioning Costs, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, and Scott. No, Senators Barlow and Landon. Senator Case, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Case?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 25, reclamation and decommissioning costs. There's a standing committee amendment that I'd ask be read in at this time.
Senate File 25, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 6, delete.
Thank you, Senator Case.
Madam Chairman, I would move the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 25, and for an explanation of the bill and to handle the Standing Committee and the next amendment, I would ask that you yield to the tall senator from Natrona County.
Thank you, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, let's deal with the Standing Committee amendment first. Madam Chairman, the Corporations Committee found that the study that was proposed in the bill was more extensive than what we really need, and that we didn't need the Standing Committee amendment. So what the amendment does is it removes the appropriation entirely. And so I would be happy to answer any questions. I'll explain it further, explaining the bill, but we no longer need it. I urge the Senate to adopt the Standing Committee amendment.
Questions on the standing committee amendment or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 41, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The Standing Committee has passed. Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, this bill comes to us because some of us have been hearing just persistent rumors from people who were in a position to know and good credible sources that there were unsolved reclamation projects at particularly a large power plant up in a neighboring county to ours that was slated for closure, and possibly some others. And this legislation, actually, the draft was taken from a bill that passed the Senate last year and unfortunately didn't make it all the way to the Green Books. So this particular need persists. We heard discussion during the interim, and we heard again in Standing Committee amendment in some detail the studies that have been done. Madam Chairman, it was quite apparent that in the potential issue here is disposal of waste, particularly fly ash from large electric generating plant. The fly ash can contain all kinds of hazardous materials, nasty materials, and if not properly disposed of, they can get in the groundwater and cause a lot of expensive trouble, Madam Chairman. So it's in our interest to have that problem solved. Letting it wait and to be discovered later just makes it more expensive and more difficult to solve, because if it's not properly disposed of, it will move in the groundwater. Madam Chairman, what we discovered was in the modern era, there's no question they've been doing as good disposal they can, properly lining the pits, and we should be fine. And that was carefully looked at. What is less obvious, Madam Chairman, is the period before the modern disposal techniques and before the modern regulation. One of the power plants dates back to the late 1950s, good dozen years before the formation of RDEQ, which was 1973, a good many years, almost as many years before the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency. And so the federal regulations in those early times were inadequate. And frankly, Madam Chairman, in the first few years of my career, I spent 3 years in EPA just after it was formed, and its predecessors were a chaos, and the regulations that they were doing were ineffective federally. So there was a period when there wasn't effective regulation on this, and that's where the reports of trouble are coming from, is from disposal. And then it not at all clear that the study that was relied on and what the decommissioning costs really were really adequately looked at this period. It's something that we as laymen can't really decide. And so what this bill is going to do is ask for a careful look, particularly at that period. And Madam Chairman, there is a committee of the whole amendment that achieves that. Can we have that read in at this point?
Senate File 25, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 4, delete.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, I move adoption of the Committee of the Whole Amendment. Madam Chairman, what the Committee of the Whole Amendment does is cut the scope of the study way down asked the Department of Environmental Quality to take a careful look at the studies that was done to identify what the decommissioning costs really were and use their expertise in-house to see if there are deficiencies there that we need to investigate further. Uses a structure already in the bill with a preliminary status report next September 1st and a final report the year after. And that would give us, if we find a major deficiency we need to study, then we would have the opportunity to come back and see that that gets done, and if necessary, fund it, Madam Chairman. But this should get us a good enough look at the work that has been done to see if it really is adequate, particularly covering disposal in that earlier period. With that, Madam Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions, urge adoption of the Standing Committee amendment and the bill. Or not the Standing Committee, Committee of the Whole amendment, the bill.
Discussion on the Committee of the Whole amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Scott's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 25, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 has passed. We're back on the bill. Senator Scott, anything further?
Madam Chairman, happy to answer any further questions.
Discussion on the bill? Senator Landon?
Just real quickly, Madam Chairman, having voted no in committee on this bill, I always like to try to stand and explain the vote. We had good testimony from the Department of Environmental Quality, good folks who do a lot of good work. This reaches back a ways, and really appreciate the bringer of the Committee of the Whole amendment. It kind of gets to more of what I think the proponents of the bill want to take another look up there. I just simply wasn't quite persuaded on this one, and so I wanted to let the body know about that. So thank you very much.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, hopefully the additional look will find that everything is fine and there's no further problems. But Madam Chairman, I keep hearing the reports in my community that there's a problem there, and I was not persuaded from the testimony in committee that the studies that have been done adequately looked at the earlier period where the problem is likely to occur. So I think this is a wise precaution to have a professional look at what was done to see if we really need to do something further and protect ourselves before our ratepayers get stuck with additional costs, Madam Chairman. So I urge adoption of the bill.
Further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 25, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Senate File 25 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 42. Will the reading clerk please read the Senate file?
Senate File 42, Low Carbon Reliable Energy Standards Amendments, sponsored by the Minerals Committee. It was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman, was re-referred to Committee Number 2, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Senator Dockstader, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recommend that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 42. To explain the bill, Senator Roth, well, we got two standing. We're going to go with Senator Rothfuss, and then Senator Ellis is going to give him strong backup.
Senator Rothfuss?
Senator
Oh.
Ellis can. She came down from the chair. I didn't know.
Oh, okay, let's go with Senator Ellis.
She walked across the room.
Madam Chair, we don't want to eliminate any of her time out of the chair. Let's let her get started.
Okay, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we bring to you Senate File 42, and Senators, I think we're all aware that Wyoming produces more coal than any other state. We have 16 coal mines here. 8 of those are 10 of the largest coal mines in the United States, and these coal mines employ directly 5,100 people. Indirectly, they employ 10,000 or more. And the average salary in this industry is $83,000. These are good paying jobs. Wyoming ships its coal to about 26 other states for power generation. And the biggest users are Texas, Missouri, Wyoming, and Illinois. There are 12 coal-fired power plants, and 17 of those plants are coal-fired units. All are owned and managed by generation and transmission utility companies. So if you look at a chart of some of these facilities, they range in age, the younger ones being 12 years old, and the oldest ones are about 65. Some are set for closure, some are set to convert to operate on gas. As a result, coal has been on the decline. It's reduced in production by about a third from 2015 to 2022. In the last 3 years, we've seen a slight increase, but Madam Chair, we're all aware of our concern in our reduced production of coal. So as we've looked at some of the influences of why that's occurred, we're aware that other states, particularly those in the Pacific Northwest, have adopted clean portfolio standards to reduce or phase out coal between 2025 and 2030. Accordingly, the federal government is promulgating more low-carbon rules, which is affecting demand for coal. So these utilities are developing integrated resource plans to start either shutting down coal plants in the near future or developing other alternatives. Wyoming has looked at the other alternatives. Our response, we created the Integrated Test Center, and we're promoting coal as more than a heating fuel, which we've discussed a lot in this chamber. We're also trying to create a market for carbon, or CO2. We are one of the few states that have provided a regulatory framework to capture CO2, which I might refer to in general as carbon. In doing that, years ago, we passed Senate File 159 dealing with the sale of coal-fired power plants, and we required that before any closure, that plant had to make a good faith effort to sell and continue to be operable. And we also passed House Bill 200, which requires utility companies to evaluate carbon capture to meet lower carbon standards. So our intent is clear. We want to promote utility companies to find partners in the carbon capture and sequestration industry to extend the life of coal-fired power plants. These efforts are challenging, particularly in how to make carbon capture cost make sense system-wide. So with that, I'd like to walk you through the bill, and that's what our intent is to clean up some of that existing statute, because there have been some changes at the federal level which affect the ability for these projects to come online. So going on to page 1, you'll see we're here amending our definition of low carbon, and this is to reflect some changes that were made in the federal IRS code, which we refer to as 45Q. You'll see some of those adjustments made. Again, these reflect the federal industry standards. And just want to highlight on line 10, we're talking about modifying these particular definitions. When we're looking at design capacity, this doesn't actually mean that the facility has to capture that. It just has to be designed to do that. And this is it would also add some definitions to existing coal-fired generation units. You'll see that language, again, trying to conform to the 45Q. Madam Chair, there's a standing committee amendment with this bill, and I'd ask that it be read in.
Senate File 42, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 11, after.
Madam Chair, I would move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 42. I'm going to work the Standing Committee Amendment as I discuss the bill, and we'll go from there. So one of the Standing Committee amendments you'll see is just a clarifying typo on line 18 to change 25 to 26. Going on to page 3, you're going to see some new language here beginning on line 10. We heard from some of our smaller utilities that about some of the challenges in making this work, and certainly we don't want, they serve simply different customers than other utilities located on the West Coast, which have these, which are phasing out fossil fuels. So we created a bit of a carve out. So any public utility that serves less than 10,000 Wyoming electrical customers wouldn't be affected. And then you'll also see some language on lines 14 and 15, and this is just to add some more clarity about, again, our goal is dispatchable, reliable, low-carbon electricity, clarifying that that could come from an existing coal-fired generation unit or an equivalent new coal-fueled generation unit. That language is to reflect the fact that there are projects out there for coal to hydrogen that actually don't burn coal but would still be run by coal. Going on, you'll see we've, in the Standing Committee amendment, asking for these plans to be provided a date of 2033. And initially that used to be 2030. That deadline was not long enough. We tried looking at 2038, but the concern was if we don't act sooner, we might not have coal by 2038, and that might have been said in jest or in with true concern. Going on to page 4, some cleanup language about filing reports. And then on to page 4, we adopted some language, again, just trying to provide more clarity on what these public utilities have to do to prepare. Going on to page 5, I won't get into this new language too much because as we've discussed this further, some of the utilities were looking for some more clarity from the Public Service Commission, but I think they've had a meeting of the minds. So you'll see that the additional language on lines 18 through 23 on page 5 would be stricken by the Standing Committee amendment. They're no longer less necessary. Going on to page 6, you'll see also some more clarifying language in the Standing Committee. We would delete the words notwithstanding any other provision of this section on lines 11 through 12. And this would just make it clear that any rate impacts would be limited to 2% for each utility. The Standing Committee amendment would also strike this additional language that you'll see on lines 17 and 18 about the duty to file, promulgate rules. The commission felt like this was already covered, so we struck that language in the Standing Committee amendment. And then as we near the end of our discussion on this bill, page 7, paragraph E, we just wanted some clarity that any reports from the PSC would also come to the Joint Minerals Business and Economic Development Interim Committee, as well as the Joint Corporations Committee. So then you'll see sections 2, rulemaking, and section 3, the effective date, which your Minerals Committee selected as July 1st. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the Standing Committee or the amendment at this time, or the bill at this time.
Questions on the amendment? Questions on the bill?
Let's vote on that.
Oh, hang on. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have some questions on the bill, but if you want to deal with the amendment first, I'm
Let's do
glad
that.
to wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor of Senator Dockstetter's motion to adopt the Standing Committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 42, please say aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, Standing Committee amendment number 1 is passed. Okay. I think we have 2 other amendments, if I'm not mistaken. Do you want to do those now or discuss the bill? Okay. Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a committee of the whole amendment. I'd ask for it to be read in at this time.
Senate File 42, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, page 1, line 6, after.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 42 and would ask you to vote aye. Senators, as we were debating some of the bills earlier this week, we know that the Corporations Committee looked at some of the exact language that we had been amending. And when you merge those 2 amendments, they really started, this paragraph started looking clunky. Members of the Joint Minerals Committee consulted with members of corporations, and so this would actually just conform to language we've already adopted on page 4, lines 17 through 23. And it would also conform with the decision that the Corporations Committee had to have all their changes take effect on immediately. So instead of waiting until July 1st, that would make this act have immediate effect. So I'd ask you to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1.
Any discussion on the Committee of the Whole amendment? Questions being called. All those in favor of Senator Ellis's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole amendment number 1 to Senate File 42, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, Committee of the Whole amendment number 1 is passed. I believe we have one more amendment. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to withdraw without objection Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2. I'd like to do some more work on it, so if there's no objection, and then I have a few questions.
So ordered.
All right. So I just have a few questions about this bill, and I wasn't a fan of this when we did it. I know the motives behind it are pure and true, and I appreciate the fact that we're trying to save our coal-fire power plants. My question, though, is, are we almost triple dipping? And by that, I mean, on page 5, we're allowing a collection on lines 13 through 18. We're allowing 2% of each customer's total electric bill to provide for recovery costs for this carbon capture. Then we're allowing the 45Q credits to come in, so we're allowing those credits. And then if they actually sell the CO2, then they're there's money there for that. So that's where my concern is. Maybe these are different entities doing each aspect of this, but what I'm really concerned about is why are we billing the customers in Wyoming for this? One, if outside of Wyoming is the reason we're doing it, right? Because our people aren't necessarily on board with all of this. And then two, how can we justify that when the tax credits are so substantial and there's the opportunity to sell the CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, which I think was the intent of this bill all along. So if we could get some answers on those questions, I'd sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I wasn't a fan of the previous bill either, for many of the same reasons. I'm very concerned about what the effect will be on ratepayers if we were to implement one of these projects and have the ratepayers pay for it. To be clear, Madam Chairman, I love these projects. I'm very much for these projects. The mechanism for payment for them is the concern that I have out of our prior House Bill 200. So I share the concern of the good senator. This legislation really doesn't change that except make it a little bit more comfortable from my perspective, because what you see on page 5 that was raised by the good senator about the 2% maximum increase, there was some concern about how that would be interpreted in the context of the original language on page 6, line 11, where it indicates that the commission shall take such actions as necessary, notwithstanding any other provision of this section, to ensure the public utility is able to recover its prudently incurred incremental costs and customers. So you have a little bit of conflict there. Is it capped at 2% or can it be whatever? So one of the things that was accomplished in the standing committee amendment, which I think helps assuage those concerns, is to strike that notwithstanding any other provision of the law. So that helps, in my view, Madam Chairman, to mitigate some of those concerns. Another thing that this bill does to address those concerns is ensure, as we saw on page 3, that the utility would have to serve more than 10,000 people. And in a circumstance where we have one instance in the state where a utility technically serves 2,500 people, then the possibility of having a carbon capture system paid for by 2,500 people. I don't quite know what that would do to the rate base, but I have a feeling it would be like 100x or something along those lines. It would be pretty dramatic what you would have to pay at that point. So that takes out those further considerations. Aligning with the 45Q in this legislation at least makes it a little bit more plausible. I honestly still don't think it's achievable, but that alignment would prevent conflicts between the two concepts. And then the final provision that I just want to point out about how this operates. Let's see, my apologies. I thought it was on a different, nope, it's on a different page than I thought it was. On page 3, you've got a date coming up, shall establish a date not later than originally July 1st, 2030, and then original legislation had it going to 2038. It's amended back to 2033. The idea here is having a decision made and recommendations of what a plan might look like that could try to achieve these interests and have a cap of a 2% increase and what that might look like. So there's a requirement of reporting back in the not so distant future about that feasibility. And candidly, Madam Chairman, my expectation would be that for the most part it would be rejected unless one of the utilities has a very novel idea, and the only novel idea that I know of out there that might end up being viable is the reason why in this bill we changed the language from coal-fired to coal-fueled. And the intent there is to ensure a next-generation technology that a utility might be interested in building de novo as a new power plant effectively, or as a retrofit of a previous power plant to keep it active for longer, still using coal, could be utilized and that might be economically viable. Madam Chairman, we don't know if that's economically viable yet. So, Madam Chairman, I share the same concerns, and I would say this bill helps address those concerns from the original House Bill 200 that I had, and still have, even with this bill. But it moves it in the direction of increasing the plausibility of it being functional, where I still have concerns, but this is in the right direction. I hope that addresses the question of the good senator from the eastern part of the state.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, following on this same topic, I've got quite a concern as to what's going on here. And I'm afraid if we don't do it right, we're going to have our ratepayers stuck with a fairly large bill. Madam Chairman, some of you may recall I was involved in an effort last year, big power plant that a number of my constituents work in that was slated to be closed. And there's an oil field that is within 6 miles of that plant that wanted to buy their CO2 to use for tertiary recovery. And frankly, would be very profitable for the state if they did that. We had several meetings with the utility that owned the power plant. And they were very frank. And I think I've heard them say it in public too, in legislative hearings, that carbon capture was not part of their business plan, and they simply were not very interested in it. They had a massive RFP process that I think basically failed, didn't get a viable proposal, and they'd structured it to exclude participation by a number of people. And the complaint we were getting from the oil community was they wouldn't talk to them. What I'm afraid is that, what I think is that there's a potential, depending on the price of oil, and especially a potential given the mix of the ability to sell CO2 for tertiary recovery and the ability to, as an alternative, get the enhanced federal tax credits involved, that if we aren't careful, we're going to wind up with the ratepayers being stuck for carbon capture that is potentially profitable to the utility given existing technology. And so I really wonder, Madam Chairman, is this bill going to solve the problem of dealing with a very large multi-state utility whose business model is to invest in new plant to get a better rate of return at the expense of the ratepayers? And I would like did the committee get into any discussion of the possibilities of CO2 capture being in fact profitable if it was done by an outfit that wanted to do it because it could make a profit at it, as opposed to a utility whose business model is to run it and stick the ratepayers for additional capital. I'm concerned that we're likely to have, as we try to preserve our coal industry, and preserve it by capturing the CO2 so we can go to our customers and say, look, it's clean coal. It's not going to increase CO2. Are we going to be able to do it in a way that doesn't stick the ratepayers? I think such a way, Madam Chairman, is potentially available, and I'm afraid our structure of laws doesn't adequately get us in that direction.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I'd like to start by saying I've been in the oil and gas business for over 50 years. I've done my part to emit a lot of CO2 and methane into the atmosphere in that period of time. And whether you're, excuse me, whether you're a hardcore climate denier, flat earther, I call them, like myself, or one of the pixie dust, my hair's on fire, far left on this project. This project does what we need to do to get our power plants, our generators in compliance with the 45Q low carbon energy requirements. Excuse me, I'm having a hard time with my voice for this morning. There's been a lot of concern about the cost of this. So let's just look at that for just a second. In Wyoming, we emit 54.6 million tons of CO2 a year from our generation. If you put that 54.6 million tons at $85 a ton, that's $4,651 million a year possible income to our generators. That $4 billion a year would be right back into reducing our rate base for our customers. On the plant up the road here, in our beautiful Laramie River Valley, it has 3 units on it, 570 units apiece, or 570 kilowatts apiece. Total capability is 1,710 kilowatts. That's max capacity. Under this new set of rules, if they had to recover 75% of that 11 million roughly 11 million of emissions that they put out, 75% would be 8,250,000 tons per year. At $85 a ton, without even taking the consideration of the possibility of selling this, that's $701 million a year of revenue stream would go back into that plant. That $701 million after the payout of the $1 billion worth of carbon capture, that's a long-term thing. So that $700 million a year reduces rates over a long time after the $1 billion payout, which on all 3 of them, you're probably looking at, well, $3 billion. You're looking at 3.5, 4 years to pay out the carbon capture under existing technology. We've done some other things with this bill. We're giving our generators another 3 years to develop the new technology. One of the technologies out there is coal combustion in the absence of oxygen. And in that technology, the byproducts are heat, which we use to generate electricity, CO2, and hydrogen. The hydrogen goes back into the fuel stream, the CO2 is captured, and they've got their new technology. It's a great new technology with 0 emissions, if you will, because the CO2 is 100% captured. We've got new membrane technology being developed at Dry Fork Station, at our facility there. We need a couple more years to really get this technology out and on the street. We've been using membrane technology for CO2 collection for years in oil and gas business. We pull CO2 out of the air. We pull nitrogen out of the air for different uses. It's not new technology. It's just a bigger application of it. They need a little time to get it up to the standards where they need it for this application. this whole thing gives our generators the flexibility they need to be that low carbon energy generator, which is what the rest of the country is asking for. I personally, when I first heard of House Bill 200, I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. But it is the law now in Wyoming. And this brings us into compliance with what the rest of the country is doing. As we traveled around with the Energy Council this last year and visited with the folks from the other energy producing states around the nation, every one of them is scared to death that they're going to lose their coal-fired generation. They're looking to us for leadership. They know that Wyoming produces the coal. They know that Wyoming is right on the edge of having this carbon capture technology ready for the market. If we believe in coal, in Wyoming, then we need to pass this legislation to give our generators the flexibility they need to move forward. Otherwise, we're just closing down plants. Thank you.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question, a naive question. I'm just wondering if someone can help me understand how the membrane is capturing 100% of the CO2 and nitrogen. Is it possible that some of it is slipping through the membrane? Just a question.
Senator Dockstader.
Well, I'll let Senator Rothfuss take up that science question here in just a moment. Let me take you back to the opening statements, my colleague from Cheyenne. She took you through all the number of jobs associated with coal, not just in the coal mines, but all the regional jobs as well. So our responsibility is, how do we keep that all intact? How do we keep that moving forward? In our world, it'd be easy. Just burn the coal, make it happen, keep those jobs in place, keep the community strong. But it's not entirely our decision because there has to be a market out there that's going to buy it. Right now, that market is challenged. So we have to be creative with a previous bill, another bill that led up to this, and this piece of legislation. If there are concerns that we have rates that are going to raise for our customers, then you can address that. There's a way to go in there and take care of that. But if you don't have legislation like this moving forward, folks, you're not going to have the strength you need to protect our coal industry, our mining industry across the state. We have to be creative, responsive, and I just commend my previous speaker, good senator there that just spoke. He gave an excellent summary. We spent the whole summer traveling around to different energy-related meetings. If we don't have something in place, we're going to lose that market. Not because it's our decision, but the customer on the end, the recipient, will make the decision for us. We have to have some protections in place. Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on the membrane technology, the membrane separation of CO2 or other gases is based on, it's almost like a molecular coffee filter or something along those lines, where you're allowing certain molecules to pass through and you're prohibiting other molecules to pass through. There's a lot of research going on. There's research going on at the University of Wyoming that's been going on for quite a while. And when it becomes commercially viable, it will be very effective. It's challenging to make robust and durable membranes at scale. They certainly are very effective at smaller scale, but that's the transition that needs to take place right now, is scaling it up and making it viable. The selectivity can be whatever you engineer it to be, and the cost effectively just goes up. If you want a higher purity stream, then you'll use more membranes, typically in a sequence series, so that you have a concentrating profile, and then you can have pure CO2 coming out one side. So it's a great technological space, and hopefully it'll reach large commercial scale in the not-so-distant future.
Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, following on from that, the membrane technology is not the only one that is possible. There is a technology that involves using a solvent, I guess, to capture the CO2 out of the flue gas that comes off the combustion of the coal. That one there was a pilot project at our integrated test center up in Gillette. It was successful. There was an installation at a large power plant down in Texas that worked, but the price of oil came down and no longer, it didn't work economically. So they stopped using it, and then I've been told they've started again when the price of oil came back up. The trouble with that technology, which it's new, but it has been proven technically, is that it has what you call a parasitic load that is in the 29 to 30% range, meaning that they use that amount of heat from the combustion of the coal to run the process instead of generating electricity with it. And that was a particular problem in Texas, where they were needing the full capacity of the power plant for stability reasons in their grid. That was not prospectively a problem here in the power plant in Wyoming. But the trouble is that parasitic load's expensive. You need a price of oil. The break even was around $60 a barrel. It may have been lowered some by the federal subsidies that you can get, because there are some subsidies available for using it for enhanced oil recovery and greater subsidies available if you don't use it for that and put it into deep storage. So the figures there are out of date, but that technology is proved and it can be used. So, Madam Chairman, there's considerable possibilities, and part of the problem you've got to be concerned with is the business model that says the way you make money in the utility business is to find ways to make expensive capital projects that run the cost to the customer up. And that's an issue I think we need to be concerned with as well, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Okay, questions being called. All those in favor of Senator Docksitter's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the favorable recommendation of Senate File 42, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, Senate File 42 has passed the committee of the whole. Senator Salazar.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Madam Chair. Honorable members of the Senate, could you welcome, we have the 12th grade government class from Fremont County School District 25. And let me just say one thing. The two teachers here, Mr. Daniel McLean and Miss Becca Pearson, I've been in their classrooms. These are two of the most incredible public school teachers that I have ever met. Could you give them a warm Senate welcome, please? Up right here on the left.
Thank you. Senator Hicks and then Kolb.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, privilege of the floor, please.
Granted.
So that last debate we had on that bill took about 25 minutes. That just killed 5 bills. I'm not kidding you, folks. If you want out of here by 5 o'clock today, just keep debating and discussing, and that's clearly the privilege of the floor. But if you want to get through these, we need to kind of keep our debate narrow and focused, Madam Chairman. But it'll be up to you guys whether you want out of here at 5 or not. At the rate we're going, we'll probably only get about 10 more bills done, which will be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 20, 25 die today. So you guys control the destiny, but that's kind of the pace we're on right now. If we want to get through these, you need to be at about 6 to 7 minutes a bill. So, Madam Chairman, thank you. Just to
That's
give you-
noted. Thank you. Senator Kolb.
Madam Chairman, privilege of the floor.
Granted.
I'd like to introduce, up in the gallery on this side, Mark Cowan. He is Sweetwater County Treasurer. Eric Bingham, who is the Sweetwater County Land Use Planner, and his lovely wife, Elizabeth Bingham, to the Senate. Welcome.
Okay, the next bill for our consideration is Senate File 23. Will the committee, we'll have that bill read in?
Senate File 23, Public Utilities Energy Resource Procurement, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott, ayes. Senator Case, chairman. Was re-referred to Committee Number 2, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Case?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a do pass recommendation on Senate File 23, Public Utilities Energy Resource Procurement. Madam Chairwoman, what this bill does is to put a little bit more rigor and a little bit more bidding in the process of establishing for resources to become into the mix as we go forward and plan our utility system. I'd be happy to answer any questions and invite any of the committee members to add on if they wish to. I'm very sensitive to the time today.
Further discussion on the bill, Senator, there's also a standing committee amendment. Would you like that read in?
I would, please.
Senate File 23, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 5, after.
Senator Case?
Give me 1 second. Madam Chairwoman,
Senator Case?
this basically makes the bill something the commission can do.
Would you
It
like to
also-
move it, Senator?
Yes, sorry, Madam Chairman, I got it. I'd move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 23, and I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Again, this is mostly about an appropriation. We've increased the workload of the commission, and this proposes one full-time position at $200,000. These are expensive analysts, but in order to do this, they just need more horsepower, and we're giving them a lot of things to do. It's a good agency, but it's the smallest public service commission in the country, and we're asking them to do some very sophisticated thinking about our future. This is part of that. As a result of having this individual and this bill, we'll be able to hopefully have cheaper resources in the line because there'll be more competitive aspects to that procurement. Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman.
Discussion on the standing committee amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion to adopt standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 23, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The standing committee amendment has passed. We're back on the bill. Further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 23, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Senate File 23 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate Joint Resolution 5.
That says 131.
The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 131. Will the reading clerk please read in the Senate file?
Senate File 131, Regulatory Reduction Task Force 2, sponsored by Senator Kolb. It was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman. Referred to Committee Number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Dockstader?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. recommend that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with favorable motion of Senate File 131. To explain the bill, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This bill is codifying the Management Council committee council that we so do and love at times and hate at others. This is allowing this task force to continue as an actual committee. There is a total of 3 House members, 3 Senate members, 3 department members, and 6 members of the public, a total of 15. It has $55,000 general fund appropriation. That's for the biennium. And there is a amendment. Will you please read in the amendment?
Senate File 131, Committee of the Whole Amendment, number 1, page 3, line 12, after.
Senator Kolb.
I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 131 and ask for your favorable consideration. I'd like to, if I could, track that in to explain what that exactly does. There was some testimony given about the makeup of the governor's appointed representatives, and this amendment is on page 3, line 12, after government, insert who is an elected official. Now this, that's all it does. These are still members that are appointed by the governor by his wishes. This just focuses in on a member representing local governments and changes that. I would stand for questions on that, for if there is any, and if not, I would vote for your ask for your aye vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussion on the amendment. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question about this. Just some discussion where it came from, why an elected official has to be an elected official. I know right now the committee, as was constituted, as the co-chair, has a member who is a county official who just recently retired, and so I'm just wondering what the discussion was about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there was members of the WHAM, if I can use those words.
No
Now,
proper names, please.
okay. There was members of groups in there that thought it would be beneficial that that was expanded or be more specific to make it an elected official. Governor's choice. Frankly, members of the body voted up or voted down. It was an effort to try to improve this. If the body feels like it doesn't, please vote it down. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We're on the amendment. Further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Kolb's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The noes have it. We're back on the bill. Senator,
Division.
all those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. The amendment has passed. We're back on the bill. Senator Kolb.
Madam Chairman, just to briefly explain what this committee has done. First, I'd like to just tell you the background. I didn't know what it was going to be able to do, but I'll report it has made great progress in dealing with the department's issues with rules and trying to streamline them. And really the end result is a lot of action did not have to be taken, but a lot of conversation did happen. And with that conversation, rules were changed that were amenable to the question at hand on why the departments were doing certain things, basically making more responsive to the public, stripping regulations that are unnecessary. And with that, it has progressed and it has been doing good things that have benefited the reduction of regulations. And I would ask for your aye vote and stand for any questions, Madam Chair.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was on this committee during the interim, and I think the good senator in front of me here had some good comments regarding that. One of the co-chairs from Teton County. I'm the biggest fan of reducing regulations, but I don't know as I'm interested in forming another committee. That's where I'm struggling with this. I think expertise throughout the committees that we already have, if we could incorporate them in regulatory reduction in those committees versus, making another committee and adding cost to the state. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll stand in favor of the bill and talk a little bit about committees and other committees. These special ones that we form, and this is the one that brings straight dollars back to state and streamlines business. And our local committees just really, the normal procedure, it takes your entire summer to take the testimony that it takes to get these. And this is one of the ones that actually can have a direct impact on what businesses come to Wyoming and how easy it is for businesses to operate in the state. And you folks have already made some good moves at it. They're just getting started with people really coming in and telling them how to make it better. I'd really encourage you to continue this fine work the committee's done.
Further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Stocksetter's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 131, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Senate File 131 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 132. Will the reading clerk please read in the Senate file? Senator Hicks.
Of the committee of the whole, beg leave and rise to sit again.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The motion's passed.
1 o'clock.
Hold on.
I want to repeat it like 5 times. We're going to be back in.
You've heard the motion? Nope. I don't have that. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. A privilege for a moment, please.
Granted.
Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side of Senate Joint Resolution 2, I would ask for reconsideration.
It's a roll call vote. It's not debatable. You're voting on, excuse me, Senator Case.
We have to identify the resolution's full name. That's a subject point of order.
Okay, thank you. Senator Landon, once again. We are on, it's a reconsideration vote on Senate Joint Resolution number 2. It's not debatable, and this is the vote for reconsideration, to vote for reconsideration.
So.
Okay. You got your script down?
So, Mr. President, my apologies. I do need to state the entire title of the bill. Senate Joint Resolution 2, Foreign Adversaries Prohibited Property Ownership. I would ask for immediate reconsideration of Senate Joint Resolution 2. Thank you.
Third reading. Add third reading to it, please.
Mr. President, third reading yesterday. Reconsideration of that vote, please.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
For reconsideration. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon?
Aye.
Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. For reconsideration, Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, 24 aye, 7 no.
The motion is passed for reconsideration on Senate Joint Resolution 2. We will now go to a vote on third reading of Senate Joint Resolution 2. It'll be a roll call vote, no debate.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 3. Third reading roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Third reading amendment, or third reading, Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, 24 aye, 7 no.
By your vote, Senate Joint Resolution Number 2 has passed the Senate. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move the Senate stand recess until 1:10.
Heard the motion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passed. Announcements. Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Transportation will meet at 12:20 in the Capital Center Room W2 and online to consider House Bill 8, Commercial Driver License, Hazardous Materials Endorsement, and House Bill 23, Vehicle Registration, E-Certificate, and Grace Period.
Landon. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, your Judiciary Committee looking forward to the weekend, but we will come back in on Monday morning, 8 a.m. in W4 downstairs to take up House Bill 46, Chancery Court Timeline for Resolution of Disputes, and House Bill 81 engrossed, Public Officer Training Amendments. Again, that's 8 a.m. Monday morning.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will come back to work Monday morning as well at 7:30 a.m. to hear 4 bills. House Bill 15, Health Insurance Reimbursement of Overpayments. House Bill 25, Medicaid Third-Party Payer Conditions. House Bill 24, Certificate of Need Repeal. and House Bill 66, firefighter cancer screening benefits.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let the Minerals Committee in line first. Minerals Committee meeting now in room 4, take on the following bills: HB 32, geological sequestration utilization amendments, and HB 33, mining operations blasting requirements. Minerals Committee eat and walk at the same time. Thank you.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, your Appropriations Committee number 2 has a noon meeting scheduled today, but we have no business to conduct, so we will just scrub that meeting. Your Joint Appropriations Committee number 2 has a meeting scheduled on Monday, February 26, 2004, upon noon recess. In room 113, we will receive a briefing from our staff on HB 001, General Government Appropriations. Time permitting, after that meeting, we will then recuse ourselves to the conference room here and have a private meeting, work session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senate will stand recess till 1:15.